Hello and welcome to the Womxn Show. I'm Lanina Rasool, and today we are going to be focusing on the theme for International Women's Day, which falls in March and is #BreakTheBias. Now, breaking the bias means addressing gender inequality, and this shows up in many ways, one of which is gender-based violence. We see women experiencing this at work, in their homes, across sectors. The other is the underrepresentation of women at work and in leadership. And lastly, there's the gender pay gap, where women get paid less than men for doing the same thing. Now, after the break, we are going to be speaking to two amazing women in tech and entrepreneurship who are going to be speaking about the gender bias that they have experienced throughout their careers. They're also going to be speaking about some of the initiatives that they launched in order to tackle that. But before this, let's have a look at a short video about how technology is being used to address gender-based violence. Let's have a look.
We conceptualized this documentary as part of our senior research project through the Center for Film and Media Studies at UCT, and the overall theme of our project was women in STEM. So when it came to the documentary, when we were conceptualizing the idea, so much was happening at the time around gender-based violence and following the tragic death of Uyinini. So it felt very natural for us to go towards this topic of how technology can help women, and also something that was topical, current, and hadn't really been touched upon before. We targeted women specifically because gender-based violence is something that predominantly affects women and transgender and non-binary people. Men can be affected to a certain extent, but they have an inherent sense of safety in this country that women don't have. So when we wanted to interview people, we wanted to look at people that walked around with that sense of unsafety constantly and how they were affected by it.
What was made very clear for us was that although technology can help combat gender-based violence, it's not the be-all, end-all. It takes people and the perpetrators to actually end the violence, and this starts within communities, families, and cultures, and that was very important for us. But it became clear that technology is an invaluable tool in order to empower women and give them a certain amount of agency to make a decision about whether they want to alert someone or track their loved ones. So in that way, it's very valuable.
It doesn't really fight gender-based violence. It doesn't eradicate the problem itself. It can only help you in a situation when you need help. You are also phoning these services, and it kind of depends on the speed to which they react to that. But most of all, I think that there needs to be more awareness of the fact that these safety apps do exist, because when we were interviewing people, we found out that a lot of women actually don't use safety apps, when I think a lot more should have them on their phone.
And I think what's also so important to consider that we found out in the documentary is that accessibility is not afforded to everyone when it comes to technology. Not everyone has access to technology that makes it possible to feel safe, be that data, smartphones, Wi-Fi access. All of these things need to first come together before you can even download the app. So even though technology is so important, only certain people have access to it, and that's something that does need to change.
Big corporations, in terms of their social development initiatives, could sponsor data for different apps in this case, which could help people because they don't necessarily have the data to use the apps to their full potential. So I think there needs to be more talk around more solutions in terms of allowing people to access these types of technology which can help them.
I'd just like to thank our supervisor, Martha, and the entire Center for Film and Media Studies for making this documentary possible and for being so helpful and so supportive throughout the whole process.
That was a short video showing how technology is helping to address gender-based violence. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we are speaking about International Women's Day. The theme this year is break the bias. And so joining me in studio are two amazing women who are breaking the bias in the tech and entrepreneurship space. We have with us Aasiyah Adams, who is the founder of Cinga Solutions and also an organization that does training in fourth industrial revolution and tech, and as well as Nasmera Buckus, who is the CEO and co-founder of Startup Hatchery. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. It's a privilege and honor to be here.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad to have you guys here. So I'm going to start with you telling us a little bit more about what you do in the tech and entrepreneurship space. And I think, Aasiyah, you can go first.
Yeah, you've introduced me. I almost walked off because I wasn't sure what you're talking about. When you said these two amazing women, I think we just do it naturally. Yeah. I own Cinga Solutions. I do triple BE scenarios for companies of 50 million rand turnover and more. But my passion and what I really want to do for the rest of my life is Abaguquli. So we give skills to unemployed, disadvantaged youth within the 4IR space. And so we're looking at robotics, artificial intelligence, coding. We're looking at drone license. And the idea is that they become financially stable. So we want them to be empowered, that they become startups. Can you see where the Startup Hatchery fits in? Where they are freelancers or where they're just driving their own, because the unemployment is very rife and very high in this country. And then Abaguquli 4IR is my new baby. So we want to be the main hub for all 4IR conferences. For, if there are any tech conferences here. And the idea is that we don't marginalize anyone that doesn't have access to this. So when Abaguquli started, it was basically just looking at getting access to disabled, getting access to the really vulnerable, getting access to rural areas, getting access to farm areas, because 4IR is going to be here. We were sharing on my birthday, Nasmera took me out, thank you, free food. We were sharing just a few of the stats, that the futurist explained. And a few of the stats is 92% of retail salespeople's jobs are no longer going to be there. 95% of real estate agents' jobs are no longer going to be there. 40% of actors' jobs, guys look out, are no longer going to be there. They're going to be using humanoid and more sci-fi animation. And so these are just a few that we mention. And that's why, Nasmera and I come a long way back. And we both have the same passion to make a difference, impact, and to give access to opportunity and knowledge to people that generally don't have it. So, yeah, that's in a nutshell what I do. Not a nutshell, but yeah.
Very, very exciting and very, very scary.
Very.
So, 92%. Nasmera, I want to come to you. So entrepreneurship, when we're looking at that, and you've done the Startup Hatchery, and when I looked at the website, I loved it. I think there was my daughter would call it a catchphrase that said, reduce the number of unsuccessful startups, which is great. And I know that, is the number still around 50% of startups fail within the first 5 years?
It's higher, so it's between 80 and 90%. And
Wow.
I think that, that's why we started the business incubator, right? Because we wanted to decrease that failure rate of SMMEs. And when we say decrease the failure rate, doesn't mean that you need to stop, right? Maybe that idea didn't work in that market or that segment or with that audience. Now what do? We pivot, right? We use this word called pivot, change direction, test with other markets, other people. And I think that's why when we founded this company in 2017, and we've helped over 1,000 entrepreneurs start and grow businesses. And funny enough, most of them were women in businesses, and it's been super fulfilling to be in the journey with them where they start and grow their businesses. And it's also, all these different biases that we have with our mindset and feeling like we have this doubts and insecurities and we're not good enough. So besides building the business, we help build the human being behind that business, because we got to make sure that, and we always say entrepreneurship's a lonely journey, right? So we play that business partner almost in your journey to make sure that the ideas you have, the decisions you're making can be bounced off people that have done it, and we have that business knowledge. And it was started during my MBA because when I was doing the MBA, I was helping entrepreneurs in Kailicha build businesses. And what I found was, then I moved on to being part of a business incubator. And I saw how effective business incubation was. So what we then did is we took that concept and we put it online. And this is 5 years ago, pre-COVID, when everyone wasn't adopting the online approach as much, where we, we challenged all the status quos and we went, hang on, this can be done online, because very early on we partnered with corporate companies, and one of them was Truett's, and we helped fashion designers that were applying for this program to help us, and it was a 12-month program at the time, to help you grow, and even if you had an idea, like how do we take that idea and you go from idea to startup, or actually building a line or a range that you can sell, right? And so it was very interesting because we had to make sure that we could help in all the different ways, given the background that we have, so that businesses can be profitable as well as sustainable. So that's the point of what we do in entrepreneurship, is not to, not everyone's going to come out of that going, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. Everyone's going to go like, hey, this is maybe not for me, and I value, financial security and getting a paycheck every month. Whereas with entrepreneurship, it's an emotional roller coaster of very high highs and very low lows.
And I think that creative, sort of that building process is, it's when I think about it, the foundations of building a business can also be applied to building other things. So for instance, a fashion line or a show, and it took a long time for me to actually see that, is that, when you're building something, there's a process that you can follow, and you can bring business principles sort of into that process.
If I can just add to that, so one of our biggest, most fulfilling, impactful projects that we're doing is we've had over 400 ECD practitioners that we're upskilling. And these are teachers, right? People that see themselves as teachers. We took them, changed their mindset, and they've now become and looked at themselves as entrepreneurs, as business women, and go like, hey, hang on, this pricing strategy is not right. So these people in lower socioeconomic areas that, that they have not, they didn't have a lot of resources or access to opportunities. And here we're going, you can do it. Like, we're doing this, and again, it is online. It's people in under-resourced communities where we found a way in which we could get as many people in this program as we could, because like with the Truett's program, we had people applying from areas like Bronkhorstspruit, whereas the access to opportunities generally lie in these higher, in the Johannesburgs or the Cape Towns or the Durbans, so metropolitan cities, right? So what's happening in the communities outside of these cities?
And you're raising an important point about our perception of what entrepreneurship is, or our perception of ourselves as entrepreneurs, because the lady who's selling sweets on the corner is an entrepreneur. And the lady who's selling, the mom is selling fruit, but it gets through school, is an entrepreneur. I know that's veering into sort of informal.
And with these ECD practitioners, they now started to think, hey, how can I open up another center and another center?
Wow.
And entrepreneurship for me, it's about job creation, because now they have more teachers, more assistants to help with these children, more income. What does that mean? They've now started paying themselves a salary, something they never thought that was like, what? Pay yourself a salary? What's that?
That's amazing.
And so I think for me, it really does come back to mindset, our insecurities, our self-doubts, who we are, the perceptions that we grew up with, us feeling like, oh, we're not good enough. And why do I think that I can do it? Like, why me? And that's where, if we don't change the mindset of the human, and before we actually try and grow the business, like, that's why every single one of our programs will focus on personal mastery.
So can I just come in with, I mean, I love what you're saying, because you also, it takes the theme of breaking the bias to such a higher level. So it's not just breaking this gender bias, it's breaking this cultural bias, breaking the bias within the socialization and messages that we've grown up with. I remember reading a book by a woman named, I can't remember, but it's about events management. And she said one of the biggest barriers to someone hosting a successful event is the who am I syndrome. The who am I to impose these rules or, impose this on my guests to do this. And, the wonderful answer to that is also, who am I not to do it?
Absolutely.
Right? So for us to question. I do want to bring in, though, you have both mentioned, you work in these sectors, you do training and development within the tech and entrepreneurship sector, and you have worked with women. And Nasmera, you said actually a large portion of the entrepreneurs that you have helped is women. And I think that's interesting because in international status also, I think I saw the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs is Black women in the United States. So really, really interesting, even though they get the least funding. Me, I think that's amazing because it means so many women are starting these businesses without capital, right? So I wanted to, just to bring us into the theme before we go to break, is to look at, so from your experience, both in your careers, before you've started your businesses and as you've moved forward, we know that we come from a space where women at some point couldn't even work, right? We have made amazing advancements into bringing women to where we are, but there are still lots of biases and there's underrepresentation. I speak to a lot of female directors and female directors of color who feel very lonely. So I love that you were speaking about support because there are so few of them. And then gender pay gap is a huge one when we speak about sort of the world of business, investing and work. And I wanted to ask, and Aasiyah, maybe you can start, is like, what does this plan look like? Like, is there still gender bias? How far do we have to go? What are some of the things that women face when they are brave enough to go into these spaces?
So I want to just take you back a little bit. I come from a defense, aerospace, and engineering background most of my life. It's dominated by white males. So I used to be the youngest, the only Black female in the boardroom when they were board of trustees. And so for me, it was really a very terrible space. Nasmera was at that time a supplier for our company. I would prep them and say, guys, this is how we're going to play this, because I want you in. But unfortunately, I've got to use X. I've got to be like, according to BE, we must use a Black female supplier. They don't care.
It's not the culture.
Not the culture. They give you 2 minutes talk time. I remember they brought in an outsider and he was going to help us improve the company. I was so like taken aback because I'm the training and development director. So I'm like, okay. And I remembered him saying something. He said, ladies, when you present, remember to dress properly because you know how you dress. And it was just like, what? Like, really? And he looked in my face and he said, did I say something offensive? So I've lived in a very, very bad sort of 2-minute culture. But let me take you to now. I still live in that culture. I run a drone school. I sit in an artificial intelligence space. I sit on the 4IR committee for South Africa. These are dominated by males. Let's look at your Bitcoin and all of that. It's white males dominating it. So 2 companies that I really admire, online companies, the Stockfeller and the Easy Equities, they started out because Black people were deprived of investment shares. We don't grow up investing, and so the minimum is 2 rand. My son has investment shares, you know, and these are people that I just really look up to. And Nasmera can cover more about the gentleman that was in prison. That was a fascinating story for me. But let me take you back to the gender biasness. I would sometimes sit and we just presented to a major municipality in Cape Town. Come on, there's only one. And we presented, and they don't have their what they call remote operating certificate. We do. So I was trying to take them through it so that all my students can then work for them with their drone license. This gentleman completely ignored me, and my partner is a male, and he kept on speaking to him about, you know, the aesthetics about the drones and the license, as if I know nothing. I'm just there for, you know, to nod my head a little bit. And my partner was male. He did it. He refused to answer. So he was forced to speak to me. And I think that breaks the gender barriers, not females. We can fight. We can prep one another. We're always strategizing how to approach. It's so sad. but males break the gender bias. When you see that somebody you know knows and they can't get in that space, give them the space. Make that person feel odd by giving them the space and being like, do you know how qualified she is? Man, I worked 10, 12 years, 10 years full-time and 2 years as a consultant in engineering, defense, and aerospace. What do you think I don't know? You know?
No, exactly. And that's exactly, I think, what gender bias is. We're going to talk about mansplaining. We won't even go into mansplaining.
That's a whole television program.
And I'm sure you have stories, but that's the thing, though. You know, your experience, everything that you've achieved and done and worked for is just taken away by the fact that you are a woman. It's not considered by the fact that you're a woman. So you are nothing outside of your gender. And that's what we're looking at, gender bias. We have about, I think, 5 minutes before we go to break. And Nasmera, unfortunately, has to leave us after that. So, Nasmera, I'm going to give you the 4 minutes to just speak about also what you're saying in terms of, to build on what Aasiyah said, in terms of entrepreneurship, where you've seen sort of the bias manifested.
Yeah, I think, because a lot of our clients are in the corporate world, so I agree with Aasiyah, you got to, but we've been fortunate enough to be able to speak to the right people, to be dealing, and when I say the right people, a lot of them are females that we're dealing with that are sitting in the corporate, around the boardroom table. And lucky enough, even with the TRIDS program, we were dealing with women and some women of color, some not. And it gave us that opportunities. And I think what we've also done is we've seen our identity not as an obstacle, but as a superpower. And that's the thing that I think women need to realize, that we need to ourselves believe that we can, that we are good enough, that we do have a voice. And I think that it comes right back to when we, growing up. What is our upbringing? Our parents raising the girl and the boy, in the same way with equal, saying, the boy is equally as strong as the girl, and when we do have these opportunities, we need to understand, okay, can we have a voice when we are sitting around this boardroom table? Because we're not women that are grown up to cook or clean or raise kids or things like that. We also need to have an opinion and be raised that we can have an opinion, so that when we are sitting around a boardroom table, we don't feel like, and yes, I've been on Exco and I've been the only woman, one, and been the only woman of color, two, whereas, I'm sitting around and everyone else is male. Sometimes, I had to take notes, take minutes, because that's what
that's like the baseline. You're the woman, so you take the notes because you're good at that.
Yeah. So, and I think, for that reason also is why, I broke out of the corporate world and started my own business, because we need to realize that we are good enough.
Yeah.
And that when we start to change our fundamental values and beliefs and take actions that lead to our best interests, that's when we're going to see change. And that needs to happen. We need to, all of us, and I'm not saying it's easy, because we all come from humble beginnings and circumstances that doesn't allow us the opportunity or somebody there to go, hey, you do have a skill. Your voice does matter. And that's the thing that I think we have a saying at the Startup Hatchery is, when people truly connect, magic happens. Yeah. And I've seen that when women truly
that's the
connect.
Same for the Womxn Show,
right?
When women come together,
really?
Magic happens.
Wow, amazing. I promise you I didn't know that. I've been fortunate enough to grow women in business, and I've seen when they collaborate, what happens. I've seen when they get together, when they open up their networks, when I'm
so sorry to cut you, but we need to go to a break. I also just want to build on that, and I want to say, even if you were raised to, or for everyone it's a part of the job, usually if you're a woman, to cook and to clean and so forth, let's not forget that running a household is like running a business.
Absolutely.
You are a project manager, so those skills in itself are business skills in terms of budgeting, that home budget, that, allocating tasks, etc., making sure it gets done right.
Human resources with a little.
Exactly, so all of that. But I want to thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you
onto
for
the show
having
and
me.
sharing. And we will be back with Aasiyah after a break. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we are speaking about the theme for International Women's Day, which was #Break the Bias. Now, before the break, we were joined by Aasiyah Adams, who is still with us, and Nasmera, Buckus, who was speaking about tech and entrepreneurship. We are now left with Aasiyah, which is great. And Aasiyah, you've got tech and entrepreneurship as well, so I know that you can hold the conversation. I want to go into, before the break, we were talking about some of the bias, your history in tech, and some of the bias that you experienced, being a woman, being ignored in conversations. We were speaking about how sometimes all of our experience and everything and our knowledge and just how much we know is just dismissed in the face of our gender as a woman. But I wanted to also ask you about, we have reached a point where there's a chronic need for more women in STEM, so women in science and technology and engineering, and there are lots of initiatives that are gunning for this. But I wanted to speak about, why are there so few women in STEM? And when we think about, also you were speaking about not excluding marginalized communities, so not just women as a marginalized group, but marginalized communities. I did not have, so when I went to tech, right, and I was 18, 19 years old, the funny story is that I didn't know how to save a Word document, right? There was just no exposure. No one had a computer. We could not afford it. And there was that I know of, internet cafes around there anyway. And one of the things that was interesting to me was like how scared I am, and still am, sort of to touch tech even. I'm just so scared I'm going to break it. And when you work with girls and boys right now, or men and women, do you see differences like that? Because men generally find a way. If it's not tech, robotics, coding, or computers, they're working with radios or trying to fix speakers. I mean, I'm just thinking about
For sure.
all of these things that I saw growing up, whereas these are things, even driving, right?
For sure.
Boys get into the car and they drive.
Instinctively.
Exactly. So do you see any of these things coming up, and does our upbringing have anything to do with it?
Oh, I've got 500 answers to this. I'm going to start with my recent memory. So recently, I've been at a conference, 3-day, where these doctors, they just got their doctorate. They had to present their papers on what 4IR and the impact of 4IR. Few observations I picked up. We were having dinner at the aquarium. It was really like an African theme, the marimba band at the back. I was sitting at a table with one male, and the rest were young female doctors.
Oh, wow.
Like, I was just like that proud mommy, like my age was just coming out there. It was only black young female doctors. They all had their doctorates in engineering. But having said that, there was probably only 3 South Africans. The rest were foreign nationals. So that I was a little concerned about because I'm like, where are our sisters, in the country? The other story I want to take you to is when we started the project, we went to Pubega and Elsies River. Before we started, I had this vision. I said, 4IR is acceptable, is accessible. Kids don't understand this. Somehow we still do the must do maths, must do science. It must be pure maths. That's absolute nonsense. When people say kids must do maths for coding, coding is a language. There's no such thing as pure maths for it. So when this group was campaigning for #decolonize education, I don't think people fully understood it. They were like, who is this group? The decolonizing education is the fact that maths and science was daunting. So I started the Barlow World Spray Painting Academy. And before you do it, you got to do a pre-assessment, maths and literacy. And these kids failed, right? Because the questions were very maths. And I
would also fail.
But I pushed them through on a hunch with my experience as an HR person. These were my top spray painters, and I'll tell you why. They used maths and physics within the context. So one of the guys that was there, he's the futurist, he said, did you know that Einstein didn't finish school? And Einstein has a saying, and please I won't quote it because I don't know it verbatim. He says, when you learn something you like, you learn it so well. And so 4IR is quicker turnaround time. I didn't want the learnership 1 year. It's long. Families are suffering, kids are suffering. They hear it every day. You're wasting your time studying. We don't have electricity. Why don't you go work? Why don't you be a packer? So we had a 4-month turnaround time. All these kids did not have matric. They all had standard 7, less, and that's it. Standard 7 was the highest. Sorry, grade 9, I'm still old school.
I know it. Yeah.
And so everybody said to me, they don't have maths and physics. You're going to die with this project. I said, challenge accepted. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to take the marginalized and trying to fix it. So when we were in the area in Alsace River, in Quebec, I would get calls. This girl was nearly raped on the way. She just sent a picture. There was a body in front of their house. These are the realities. When you stand in Alsace River, all the drug merchants are right around you. We funded the barbed wire. It's a smaller parameter, but that's all we could have funding for. You'll see all the drug merchants standing around you. Ladies would come to me personally and say, Aasiyah, this guy, he's being initiated into a drug. Can you put him into a gang? Can you put him in our group? This is the reality. And this is what peeves me the most of the people making decisions, is that they don't give these kids the time of day because of their situation. And you're like, we have bright kids. We just don't have creative, innovative, and customized ways of doing it. So they're like, I gave this child all the opportunities and they still dropped out. Maybe because the child's going through rape at home. Maybe because there's drug abuse at home.
Maybe they don't like what they've been taught in mainstream.
Absolutely.
Because that's the other thing.
So
right?
when I did the introduction, of course, I did the whole planning. I went there and nobody was excited. None of the kids. It was daunting. They don't have matric. All they wanted was just their matric and just quietly leave. And I'm like, okay, when you're done, when you're done with your communication and your numeracy, we're then going to do chatbot development, mobile app development, e-commerce development, and digital marketing. They flipped. They were like trying to drop out. I said, you force them to stay on. Give them time. When they did it, they were champions. So what I did was I looked at all the top freelance jobs internationally. And I said, what do we do to make sure that these jobs they have the skills for? I don't want any child to wait for a certificate and not generate income and then go look for work. None of my kids must look for work. None. Our tagline is that we don't create jobs, ever. That's not what we do. So then they went on, they did so well. They were earning 1.8 per month. That's what we got as a stipend. I get messages now, Aasiyah earned 30,000 Rand this month. Because they were earning pounds, euros, and dollars.
Yes.
So then we gave them a domain for 1 year. We set them up their profile, put them on the 5 top freelancing sites in the world. And because they're insecure and they don't articulate, they didn't even have to face a customer. There's jobs, they take it, they say, I can do it. They do it once, the customer says, well, do another one for me. All they do is chatbot development, digital marketing, which is SEOs, e-commerce development, and mobile app development from their home. So we had a problem, they didn't have computers. We asked all the corporates because they get corporate social investment money because I do BE. I know how the points work. They got that. That's all they needed. Once they landed their first job, their fiber was set up. And I feel this is the problem South Africa has. You're trying to fix a problem that you have no idea what it's about. And so this thing about job creation, I hate that word with all my heart. I hate it.
I want to interrupt you because you are blowing my mind with all of this, with all this information, and all I'm thinking about is like, wow, like how do I integrate this? I'm a parent, right? My kid is 8. I can just imagine there's a lot of people sitting at home, overwhelmed, thinking about like listening to this, what it sounds like it's almost a land of honey. And I agree with a lot of those things. I especially about learning. And when you're studying something that you like, I'm a self-learner. So outside of school, I read and try to learn. I believe you can learn anything, right? Not to focus on your weaknesses, but I believe that we can learn anything if we are invested in it. So I want to break it down for some of the people at home who are thinking, this is interesting. Who are in these communities where there are lots of drugs, where there are lots of gangsters, and where it seems like there is very little opportunity. So what can people do? What can parents do? Like how do we frame this as a possibility for ourselves?
Well, firstly, I think we need to take it to the areas that don't have it. So my one dream, and I'm saying it on public TV that I'm working on now, I want to take one of those really big trucks, you know, when you have the Coca-Cola trucks?
Yes.
And we're working on it. And I want to fully kit it with, from your Minecraft to your PlayStation. We're speaking to the SA police with their old helicopters, putting a helicopter in there and create a simulator where you wear the goggles and somebody's flying a drone and you feel it. And I want to take it into a farm area. And my vision is these kids running after the truck. And when they're done going through, so they're greeted by a humanoid at the door, they're greeted by a robot. Sorry, a humanoid is more emotion. They can detect your emotion, your face and your voice.
Yeah.
A robot is just projected just to look at you and just say 4 words and that's it. That's how they're programmed. And so this thing is greeting them. They're walking through this truck. They're learning how to code. Minecraft is a coding game. I don't know if everybody knows that, right? And so they're learning how to code. And they walk out there and we want to break that cycle. We don't want farm workers anymore. It's been very tough on us. The farmers do not want us in. They love poverty as a market. So I want to break that cycle where that child's starting to think, well, hold on, I don't want to be a farm worker anymore. Because what we're doing is we're moving forward, and the disabled are moving back, and the farm workers' kids are moving back. That's all they see. And when people say to me, you know, you are who you are, and if you work hard, you get it. And I said, really? Because I don't believe that. I believe, I grew up on the Cape Flats. That's my motivation. And all I saw was gangs on the one side, right? I have a complete fear for drinking. When people say, oh, you don't drink because you're Muslim, I said, no. When I saw people drinking, they used to stab and kill.
Yeah.
And so that's my association, right? I grew up with God-fearing because that's the only way my dad could. You're not allowed to speak to boys. You're not allowed to go out, you know. But it was also, I lived in a really bad area. And so my question is, what are these kids' role models? It's all the drug merchants. They have the biggest car, the most women. They have money all the time. And then they come home and their mother works 12 hours before they leave and they come home late and they still don't have electricity in the house. Take that kid out quickly. Go put that kid in Bishop's. Give that kid a proper home. Give that kid the love and no arguments, no nothing. Tell me again what that child's going to become. So I don't believe it's your choices. It's really just when you're poor, you're in that space and it's survival mode and that's all you know. But my question is, if I give a kid from a rural area on the Cape Flats 4 IR skills, I teach them how to do artificial intelligence, and you take my child who's, you know, okay income, parent, and he has all the support, you know, he's living in a house, he doesn't have to walk to the outside toilet. You ask him, what would you like to code? My son was 8 when he coded his first game. He now coded without coding his second game. I encourage him completely. In our house, gaming is important. So, and you take a rural child and you say to my child and that rural child, design something with the skills you got. What do you think is going to come out of that rural child? Way better than mine. All my son knows is, you know, I'm going to be a gamer and I'm going to code another game. That rural child is looking at the problems within his community. A taxi app, a crime app, an anti-hijacking app. You know, how to
problem solving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My son has all the luxuries, and I say it, you know, and when people say to me, you know, you work for poverty, but your son, and I'm like, we should drop this cycle. We should stop looking at people of color whenever they buy something, whenever they achieve something, we're like, oh, but you know, this guy, now that he's got money, now he's earning. Good. How do you break the cycle? How do you break the cycle of poverty? We're all going to sit back there when other people, minority in this country, can enjoy it. So
I'm going to ask you, and just to bring it back to gender, because this is a thing. This is a thing with women especially. And I feel like, you know, when we, you know, there's so much thrown down. So there's books written about it specifically for women about imposter syndrome, about fear of judgment. Let's just call it fear of judgment. And there seems to be also a fear of success, because exactly what you're talking about. Yes, it happens across the board, and men seem to care about it less. You know, they'll go drive that Porsche,
no, for sure.
right? And be proud of it. I have 2 brothers, right? So they never apologize for anything, right? They will actually, you know, no, let me not say that. Let me not stop there.
I still need to have Sunday lunch at the house.
Exactly. But yet when every single woman up to executive level has got this deep wound, is sometimes what they call it, right? We have these deep wounds around judgment, and maybe it's because there are greater expectations on women because of the caring, nurturing, care work, nurturing. You know, they're not allowed to want success and lots of things. Do you find that as a barrier? Do you see that as something? And in your training, there must be these internal barriers that you're seeing amongst girls and women that also, besides rape, gender-based violence is obviously a thing.
For sure. I think I'm fortunate. So with our organization, we only take people of color. And I don't apologize, because our objective is to move people of color forward, So when people say, you don't have any white person on your program, I say, no, that's not my target, done. So with women, we had so many women, and they become the nurturers in the group naturally. That's their role that they take on. But there's so many young mothers that I believe they take on a different angle, in that they try and make it work because now they have offspring, but they're also still taking care, the black tax of their parents. I think there's so many deep-rooted stuff. You don't even know where to start with women speaking as a woman of color. I read posts sometimes, and they say something about a woman, and let's take the Kim Kanye debacle, I'm not a fan of international celebs, but let's take it. Nobody looked at Kanye as he's narcissistic, and it's scary behavior. And everybody's like, oh, she's just looking for attention. And the people that answer that are women. Because the way we make it work in our society is if we bring one another down. So when kids ask me any advice, being a successful business person, I say, one, choose your circle. And number two, don't go out there thinking, I'm doing this for the passion. People who say that are the people that are wealthy, trying to use you as a slave. If you're not making money at all my graduations, then I have been unsuccessful. My aim wasn't for you to be passionate and tell people what you do. My aim was for you to send me a message saying I'm making 30,000 Rand a month, and next month I will make more because I'll bring someone in. Say it. Say it, I'm going to make money.
I saw a post on Facebook the other day, and I shared it. It was this guy, let's not shame people for working for a paycheck.
Absolutely.
There is this whole there's a whole focus on working for your passion and finding your passion, even if you broke. There's no passion if you're not eating.
Absolutely.
And there's no shame in working for money.
Absolutely, because what you're doing is stress. And so I think with women, there's so many things, On our programs, we've had a different scenario. Also, I've been like a mommy. So I'm like, you don't touch my child. Don't. Because I know what it's like when they can't articulate, because they don't have the confidence. They haven't sat in these boardrooms taking on these white males saying to them, sorry, what? You don't understand what I'm saying, but you understood the white Afrikaans male. Why don't you understand what I'm saying? Something wrong with what I'm saying? I've done it. I'm not scared. I've been there. So I can take you on. I don't care what you think of me. But I've seen a timid person. So when somebody bullies them, I'm like, what? My child. You don't mess with her. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to draw up your proposal. They're going to be shocked. Before you know it, this proposal's been backed with top business people, and here you are, this timid person. They're going to be like, what? Where does this come from? So I think for me, that is what women are going through. I also think, I hate this word with all my heart, the word hustle. It was brought there for us to believe that we're working hard or we're doing something. Now, on the Cape Flats, there's a gangster term called skarrel. It means exactly as hustle. Every drug addict says, my bro, I need to skarrel for an oat. I need to get some money.
And it's a survival mode term, right?
So why are you saying hustle? Because what you're doing is you're living so you get a 2 million Rand tender, your expenses are 1.9 million Rand. And so you're making jack out of it, more than none, your expenses are 2.2 million.
Yeah.
You know why? Because that's what you did. You saw the bigger picture. You didn't work out what it's going to cost you. And so there you're at. And it's taking a longer time for you to generate the income. So I'm like, freelancing is quick money. It's there. Go and Google freelance anything right now, even video production. That's what I'm doing now with one of our investors. Everything is there. Go and do it. Sound overs, all of that. Go and generate that money.
Aasiyah, oh my word, I'm feeling so overwhelmed right now. I think that we are going to have a few more shows together to expand on a lot of what you've spoken about. But I want to say thank you for coming here today and for sharing those insights and for showing us, because that's the thing, representation matters. And so for showing us, even for me, to see that it's possible to be able to stand up and do those things. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor. I've been with Cape Town TV when it started, actually, as to facilitate their strat meetings back in the day. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
We are going to take a short break now, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to Still Watching the Womxn Show, and we have been speaking about gender bias in technology and entrepreneurship. We are almost at the end of the show, and what an amazing conversation it's been. Now, if like me, you are feeling a bit overwhelmed, I mean, we were speaking about robotics, artificial intelligence, and coding, and you're not sure where to place this, we are going to play a short video about how technology is being incorporated into schools and how we are preparing our young people for the fourth industrial revolution. Let's have a look.
I decided to come on the camp because Code really helped me with my future, and because coding is really fun.
Can't wait to start with the camp and the things that I'm gonna do here. I just can't wait. I feel so excited and nervous at the same time because I don't know what to expect here.
There is a massive shortage of women working in technology, and there is a whole new thing and a whole new approach of how women and girls look at things that can bring a lot of value to how software solutions can be developed. It's not only bridging the gap, like the gender gap that there is, but also all the value that they bring from looking at the world from a different perspective.
I think the most important thing about this camp is that these girls are getting a head start in the tech industry. They're learning something that you only learn in third year, computer science. They already know how to do basic websites, and if they do keep on working on their skills, they could be programming web applications that are on an international standard.
We work with teenage girls all the time, and I think the biggest thing that's empowering for them is just to have people care and to teach them something and to help them build themselves up. So I think the Code for Cape Town camp is really awesome. It's giving the girls an opportunity to be empowered and to also feel like, you know, have some self-motivation to become businesswomen or to lead what they are good at while learning a lot of skills.
I think what's beneficial here is what they're learning, so the actual skills that they're learning, but there's so much more than that. It's about the constant reminder of what else is possible as well.
What we hope the girls got out of our workshop is that when they are doing building the software this week, that they bear in mind the users that they're building for, their needs and their goals, so that what they produce at the end is something that would be useful for the end user.
So through this process, we've obviously used HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we really have to remember JavaScript and all of those things like variables, functions, all of those things that we had to remember from Code Week with coding. So it was really an interesting process, and I really enjoyed it.
A hula hooping session for over an hour, and although it sounds like a walk in the park, it was not at all.
other people, and not getting to know each other well.
This afternoon to speak to Code for City students on a career in ICT for development. I want to show them the importance of using technology to effect change in developing countries, but especially in low resource settings. I want to show them that learning to code doesn't only end with learning a cool skill, but it goes towards using that skill to change a life. I just want to show the girls that by going through a program like Code for City, they're being placed at a place of advantage because they're going to be part of the revolution that is happening within Africa right now.
What they've been learning has been out of this world. They've been putting together apps that solve real problems, that make an impact in other teenage girls' lives, and they've been doing it in ways, creative ways that we could never have predicted, so it's really awesome. We packed an incredible amount of content into 5 days, just morning lessons, and the fact that we were able to teach everything to the girls that we'd hoped to was an amazing success. We can already see them using what they've learned in Code Week now in problem solving for their Code Camp projects, and I feel very confident that a lot of them will take those skills further and continue creating with code.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Remember, technology is the future.